My little sister and I are, what, 15 years apart. She was 6 years old when she disappeared. This only just happened. Why does it feel like it's been so long? Anyways, I went home from college when I got the news. Mom and Dad, they were out of it. I was expecting them to be grieving, but I wasn't expecting this. They didn't even look sad anymore, they just seemed empty. Like walking husks. They looked like ghosts, too. Mom had stopped eating entirely after the disappearance. She's in the hospital right now because of it, actually. Back to Stella. She was abducted from our own front yard. Can you imagine that? Some sick bastard just walking right up to a kid sitting in the grass and playing with her dolls and simply snatching her away? If you ask me, the police gave up way too soon. Don't give me that look. I bet you thought the same thing. Were you there at all? If you ask me, the whole lot of you should have come out onto the streets to look for her. But no. You'd rather stay here, sitting on your fat round asses. Don't tell me you had other things to do. Nothing ever happens here, and Stella wasn't the first one either. These kids have been going missing this entire year now, haven't they? The interviewer offers Jason B. to take a break. No, you better record this whole thing. But I get it, I'll get back on track. Let's see. Stella, she'd been gone for a week or so and we weren't hearing back from you guys, so I started thinking about this whole thing myself. Now, I know I'm practically insignificant. I'm not smart or have any kind of training or whatever, but I do know my little sister. I held her when she was a baby, I sang to her when she was crying. I cared about her. I might not have been there, but I never forgot that I'm her big brother. It's my job to protect her, right? I'm a college dropout waiting to happen. If I could reach nothing else in life, I'd at least get my baby sister back to our parents safe and sound. That's what I told myself. In the beginning, I couldn't really do much except ask around. Nothing. You guys didn't fail it already. My folks met up with other grieving families, other parents who had lost their kids. They had all been Stella's age, all girls, 5 to 7 years old, all of them kidnapped in broad daylight. Since nobody ever came forth to demand ransom money, we all expected the worst. If no one was asking us to pay in exchange to get them back, we probably wouldn't be seeing them again at all. When you're in that kind of situation, you just get the worst thoughts, you know. Like, what if they were kidnapped for human trafficking? Just to imagine your child or sibling being sold to some perverted pig who would do God knows what to them. It makes you sick. It made me sick. However, there was one more link. Apparently, all of the girls had been talking a lot to Mrs. K in the weeks leading up to their disappearance. Mrs. K is this very friendly old lady who lives door to door with all of us. Everyone's used to having her around and seeing her outside because her husband died a long time ago and she has no family to come visit her, so she's just really lonely, I guess. At first, I thought it was impossible for her to have anything to do with the kidnappings. She was already old when I left home. Besides, she loved the kids. Her doing anything to hurt them was unthinkable. Still, I went knocking on her door. She probably had already been questioned before, but I simply wanted to be safe. Maybe she had at least seen something. I'd never been at her place before. She'd talked to me too when I was little and I'd always thought she was nice, kind of like an extra grandma, but I had never gotten a glimpse into her home. Her house was extremely large, almost like a mansion. I think her husband used to be rich. She was reluctant to let me in at first, but then she asked me inside anyway. I had this weird feeling about it from the very start. I think it was the smell. There was an underlying odor in the air of that entire lower floor. It was incredibly faint at first and I can't even describe what it smelled like, it was just bad. On top of that, I could smell something else in the air. It was overly sweet, like she'd sprayed perfume in the rooms or something. There were loads of these little vintage paintings and drawings of fairies on the walls and all her furniture was rustic and cutesy. It looked like something from an old movie. Kind of like a dollhouse, even. So, she went into the kitchen to get us tea, and told me to wait in the living room. I sat down on the sofa and waited. She was humming to herself in the room over. I had this weird feeling again, and I couldn't stand that faint, rotten stank, so I kind of sensed something was wrong. Mrs. K was still distracted, so I just took my chance. I got up and went back into the hallway, and from there, I went upstairs. I figured that's where the bedroom and bathroom would be, and maybe I'd find something with her personal belongings. I didn't know what, mind you, and I'm normally not the invasive type, but I simply had to go and take a look. There was a door just up ahead, the first one of 3, so I walked right in there. It was just a bathroom, though. I decided I'd better check out the other rooms, and if there was time, I could still examine them in detail, but for now, it was better to hurry and see if anything obvious was wrong or amiss. It's hard finding things when you don't know what you're looking for. And I really had no idea, but, well, in this case it ended up being pretty clear. I'm sorry, I'm not laughing, I'm really not, it's just the nervousness, I guess. Why the fuck am I laughing? She was my sister, my goddamn sister, and the interviewer offers Jason B. a break again. He accepts. After being left to recover for 10 minutes, Mr. B voices his readiness to continue. It's okay, I'm good. Thanks. I just needed a moment there, I suppose, but I'm fine, I really am. I feel like I'll have to have counseling or something, won't I? It's just that I can't get her out of my head. Every time I close my eyes, it's just her, and I see her in that room. And ever since it happened, it's like everything else just isn't real anymore. It's hard to describe. I mean, for example, I know that I'm sitting here with you looking at me, and I'm talking, but it's like I'm not really doing that. Feels more like I'm watching us on TV or something, or like I'm sitting behind a glass screen. And I'm so damn tired. Never mind. Sorry for rambling. You think that's normal, though? Yeah, I hope so too. It probably will, I just need some time to deal with it. Thanks. Anyways, I opened that next door, and inside, it was all dark. There was a light on somewhere in there, but it was super dim and faint. I couldn't see anything. So I reached in with my hand and I started groping for a light switch. I found one, and immediately, everything turned bright. The room was bare, with no furniture or windows. There was a tiny lamp in the corner, the source of that warm little glow from before, and a real one up on the ceiling. But that was it. Except for the blankets, of course. There were around half a dozen of them. They were lying rolled up on the floor, held together by ropes tied around them. They'd been laid out in this neat, orderly row. They all had a wider and a thinner end, and the thinner one was pointing towards the door. I suddenly noticed that in this room, the odd stench was at its strongest. This was where it had been coming from all this time, and it had wafted its way all throughout the house. I knew what it was then, too. The smell of decay. Of course, I knew what was in those blankets, but I was in a weird, foggy headspace where I couldn't have been sure of anything. I bent down next to one of them, next to the wider end, and I saw brown hair poking out from it. I was surprised I could think straight in any way, but I simply thought that if they were arranged in some kind of chronological order, and Stella was the most recent girl to go missing, then she would have probably been placed on the far right. It could have been the far left too, but that's where the brunette was, and Stella had blonde hair. Why am I even mentioning this? I'm so okay. I went over to the other side and I could already see that light yellow hair spilling out from the blanket roll, so I grabbed the blanket and I pulled it down as far as I could with the rope still on. I just wanted to see her face. I wish I hadn't done that. I'd never seen a dead body before. I'd heard how people describe them, like oh, they looked like they were asleep, so maybe that's what I was expecting? A peaceful sight? I don't know, but it wasn't what I got. It was still alright, but she looked so off. Everything about her face was the way I'd remembered, but lifeless, completely still and dead, and with this purplish tinge to it. I started gagging on the spot, so I covered her back up immediately, and then I kind of pulled the blanket around her tighter. I'm not sure why, but somewhere in my head I was like, she must be so cold, my baby's sister is freezing and I wanted to keep her warm, and I hadn't even realized I'd started crying. I was crying like right now, only harder. I was too confused and dizzy and nauseous, but I tried to keep my head straight. I needed to get out of there, I needed to call the police. I stood up, and when I turned around, there was Mrs. K in the doorway. She was looking at me with wide eyes, like she was in shock, or really dismayed at something. I froze on the spot, despite her not making a single move in my direction. "What are you doing?" she asked me. She was speaking in a low voice, a whisper almost. "Get out, quick. You can't go and disturb them. They just pupated." I started running. I shoved her out of my way and then I stumbled down the stairs and burst out through the door, and then I ran down the street and screamed at the top of my lungs, and, well, you know the rest. Some neighbor came out to help me. They had to get me to calm down at first, and then we called the police, and here we are now. In hindsight, it makes so much sense, even though it seemed so outlandish at first. She had it easy. The girls knew her, and they trusted her. I'm guessing she'd go up to them when they were alone and just ask them to come with her, and they probably didn't even think about saying no or being suspicious or anything. I don't know what's wrong with Mrs. K. Sure, she's not right in the head and I have no idea where she was going with any of this, but to be frank, if you guys were to tell me she's sick or plain crazy, that wouldn't change anything for me, I think. The worst thing is, I'm no expert but I think Stella would have looked differently if she'd been dead for longer. Like, if Mrs. K had killed her right after she'd abducted her, she would have already been falling apart. So, for how long was she alive? What did that woman do to her during that time? Maybe I'm better off not knowing. I'm almost grateful none of you guys are telling me how those girls were actually killed either. I feel like if I knew, that'd make it worse. I need some sleep. Hey there. Thanks for making it to the end of this. So, I'm not gonna tell you who or where I am, but I was involved with putting together the interview with Jason B., the young man who found the bodies of the 6 missing girls. What you just read, basically. I could get into a lot of trouble for sharing this, but I'm doing it nonetheless because the cops who were supposed to save these kids really messed up. They're probably going to try and sweep it under the rug too. So, using my limited options, I want to make sure it doesn't come to that. I'd love to give you more information, but I need to be careful. Besides, I didn't get the big picture either. So, I guess that's it for me, folks. Send some good thoughts out to Jason. The poor guy could use them. Please like our video and subscribe to our channel, so you won't miss out any of our future videos. Thank you for your support. This is RedditJoe channel, your everyday Reddit.